Hello and welcome back. In the last video, we added the buyer schema. Now we want to add the seller schema. Now we're going to add a lot of information into the schema. Okay, so let's just get started with it. Here I'm going to create the schema, okay, of type schema, and then equal to new schema. Here, let me just move this down. Oh yes, this is what I want, and I can fix this. Okay, so for this I need a full name. Yeah, probably this full name will only be displayed to the seller. It will not be displayed to other users. Maybe we can decide later on the front end to display to other users. Okay, but we can add a full name. Okay, and then it's required, set it to true. Okay, we need a username. This is what will be displayed on the gig and to other users. Okay, this is going to be a string. It's going to be required, set it to true, and I'm going to index this. Okay, we already understand why we are adding this index. Then next, let me just duplicate this. The next is email. So email is going to be of type string. It's required and it's also indexed. And for this, we can add a profile picture. Okay. So for this profile picture, we don't because we are only going to be using the URL. I remember when we created the profile picture, at least in the auth service, we created the public profile ID or profile public ID. Okay, so the URL will always have the profile public ID as long as we upload it to Cloudinary. But if it's from the seed, data, then it's going to be a little bit different. Okay, so this is going to be of type string, and then required, set it to true. And then the next one is going to be a description. Okay, so this description is going to just be information about the seller. So the seller will add information about themselves right here. And possibly, do we need the profile public ID? I'm just thinking if I need it. Let me just add it. Okay, type will be of string, and then required true. For this, because I'm going to have this in the profile picture, yeah, I can leave this for now. Okay, and then another information we want to add is like a one-liner. So this description will be the full description. Okay, so the seller will add a full description about themselves, but here we're going to add a one-liner. I call it a one-liner. So it's just going to be like a brief information about themselves. Okay, so this is going to be of type string, and it's going to be required true as well. Okay, so this one-liner is just going to be brief information. It will just contain brief information, but the full description the seller will add to this description field. Okay, and then here we can set country. Okay, type string, required true. Okay, what I want to do is for this one liner, I will remove this required true. Instead, I will just add the default. So default will be an empty string. Okay, because if we set it to required true, when the user creates an account, probably they might not maybe want to add a one-liner at first. Okay, so we can just set this as an empty string, set the default value. Okay, then I want to add the languages. So the user can add the languages that he or she speaks. Okay, it's going to be an array. Okay, and it's going to be an array of objects, and it will contain language. So they can add multiple languages. Type is going to be string. Required is going to be true. Okay, and then the level. Okay, so if it's a beginner's level or if it's an expert level, okay, then they will set the language. For example, if maybe it's a user that English is not the native language, they can add English and then maybe beginner as the level, or maybe if it's an English native English speaker, they'll add expert as the level. Okay, so languages is going to be an array, and then we want to set the skills. The user will add their skills here. It's going to be an array of strings, so type string required set to true. Okay, so if the seller is a programmer, they can add all the skills that they have. Okay, if they're a designer, they can add all the skills they have right here. Okay, now we add other information. Okay, so here we're going to add the rating count. So for every of the user's gig that is rated, we are going to just add the total number of ratings for the user gig right here. So default is going to be 0 for all the users gig. So if a buyer rates the user's gig or the user, then we are going to add the number. If it's a 5-star rating, we're going to add the number 5 because the default is 0. So it's going to be 0 plus 5. Then if another user rates 4, it's going to be 5 plus 4, just like that. Okay, so that is what this rating counts for. And then we set rating categories. Okay, this is going to be an object. Now this rating categories, we are going to add the different level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so because we are going to use this to display on the, I think on the seller's profile, we are going to display how many number of 5 stars they have, how many number of 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 and 1, just like that. Okay, so we'll take two properties, a value, this will be of type number, and default is going to be 0, and then a count. So count, this is going to be of type number, and default will be 0. Okay, so what it means is how many 5-star ratings does the user have. Okay, so that is what we're going to set. I'll change this to 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this is going to be 4, this is going to be 3, 2 and 1. Okay, okay, now another property we want to add is the response time. Okay, so response time, this is going to be, it's going to be in hours, but the type is going to be a number. So on the user's profile page, we're going to add the response time, like how long does it take for the user to respond to a message. So 2 hours, 1 hour, just like that. Okay, then recent delivery, so recent delivery, so it's just going to be of type date. So this will contain the date of the user's last delivery. Yeah, I can set the default to an empty string. Okay, and now let us add information about their experience, their education, their certificates. Okay, so we are going to add those information right here. Now for the experience is going to be an array of objects, and the object will contain, so this is like the work experience. Okay, so work experience of the user. So company, where the user has worked before, type string, and then it will have a default value of an empty string. Okay, and then we have the title. So what title did the user hold while working in that company? Was it a senior developer or whatever, or senior designer or whatever? Okay, and then we have the start date. The start date, we are going to use it as a string. Okay, start date, type string. Then end date, so when did the user start and when did the user end? Okay, now for this end date, the user will implement it in such a way that if the user is currently still working there, we are going to set a different value there. And then we have description. Okay, so like what was their job description. And then lastly, this is going to be currently working here. Yeah, currently working here. This is going to be a boolean, and the default is going to be false. So if the user is currently working at the company, then we'll set this value to true, and then this end date probably will be a different value. Okay, so here we have the experience. I'm going to stop here. In the next video, we'll continue with this seller schema.